Elias Monroe and Detective Rhea Calder stand before the small silent house at the edge of Briar Lane under a bruised evening sky, and the documentary narrator whispers that everything began with a simple welfare check that should have lasted 5 quiet minutes but instead unraveled the most unsettling truth the town had ever faced. And as the camera glides toward the dim porch light flickering like a warning, the story fractures into uneasy pieces, revealing the dread that wrapped itself around the neighborhood for weeks. Because Elias, the friendly retired teacher, had not been seen in days, yet no one imagined the shadow that was waiting behind his locked door. And Rhea, with her steady breath and knotted thoughts, felt the cold sense that someone or something was orchestrating more than a routine knock, and the audience feels the tension coil as the narrator notes that sometimes the smallest unanswered call becomes the doorway to a secret that refuses to stay buried. When Rhea pushed the door open with her flashlight slicing through the thick stillness, she sensed a heaviness in the air that felt wrong, as if the house itself were holding its breath, and echoes of Elias' life lingered in the neatly arranged books, the warm knitted blankets, and the faint scent of cedar that always calmed him but now only deepened the mystery. And the narrator explains that welfare checks often reveal loneliness or illness, yet this one carried a strange, deliberate quiet that seemed almost staged, and every step Rhea took felt like stepping into a memory that did not belong to her, as if someone had arranged and rearranged the space to tell a story without words, pulling her forward with an invisible thread. And as she reached the hallway, a single overturned chair suggested the first silent hint that Elias had not left willingly, raising a fear that settled like frost behind her ribs. The deeper she moved, the more Rhea felt watched, though she knew the house was empty. And the narrator draws out the suspense, telling viewers that investigators later discovered subtle signs that someone had been inside days before the welfare call, someone who knew exactly how to leave almost no trace at all. And Rhea stared at the framed photographs on the wall, noticing that one had been removed, leaving a perfect rectangular shadow where it once hung, and she felt a chilling realization that the missing photo was likely taken for a reason, a message or a warning. And when she entered Elias' study, she found his desk drawer open with nothing gone except a small leather notebook he always kept close, the same notebook he used to jot odd observations about people who passed his window each evening, which would soon reveal connections that stunned the entire investigation. As the narrator continues, the tone turns eerie, describing how Elias' neighbors had reported seeing unfamiliar figures lingering near his house at night, though none could recall faces, only vague shapes under the street lamp glow. And Rhea, uneasy from the shifting clues, stepped outside to question the nearest neighbor, Mara, who trembled as she admitted that she had heard Elias arguing with someone 2 nights before, but the voice had been calm, almost rehearsed, and Mara insisted that Elias sounded confused rather than frightened. And Rhea felt the threads pulling tighter, sensing that this case was not about a break-in or disappearance, but about a pattern crafted with intentional patience. And as the documentary score deepens, the narrator states that unknowingly Rhea was standing in the exact spot where the truth began to loop back on itself, forming a circle that trapped both the hunter and the hunted. Rhea returned inside and found herself staring at a faint mark on the floor near the back door, a small scuff that suggested something had been dragged, though nothing heavy was missing, and the mystery only clawed deeper into her thoughts. And the narrator emphasizes the psychological tension, noting that Elias, being meticulous, would never leave inconsistencies behind, which meant someone else had shaped this quiet chaos. And as Rhea paced, she suddenly noticed that the radio in the kitchen hummed with static, even though the house had no power outage, and the eerie sound filled the silent rooms like a coded whisper. And as she leaned closer, a flicker of realization struck her, because Elias had once mentioned that he used static to mask conversations when he felt people were listening, and now the same static suggested that he had been trying to hide from someone just before he vanished. The breakthrough arrived when Rhea found a slip of paper tucked beneath a floorboard, revealing only 3 words written in shaky handwriting: "Trust the record." And the narrator reveals that this clue led investigators to examine audio tapes Elias had hidden in his attic, tapes containing quiet, nightly recordings of the street outside. And the documentary atmosphere thickens as Rhea listens to hours of soft wind and distant footsteps, until one night stands out, capturing a calm, unfamiliar voice speaking directly toward Elias' window, telling him that the truth he had uncovered would soon be corrected. And that no one would believe he had ever existed without proof, and the chilling implication left Rhea breathless as she realized that someone had been erasing Elias, not physically harming him but removing his identity piece by piece, and the police files began to show patterns tied to older unsolved cases that suddenly connected like constellations. In the final twist, the narrator explains that weeks later Rhea discovered Elias unharmed, living under a new name in another town, claiming he had fled because he realized someone he trusted had been infiltrating community spaces, rewriting official records and manipulating digital trails, including his own, and though he refused to reveal who it was, he handed Rhea his recovered notebook filled with observations that pointed not to a stranger but to a respected local official who had access to municipal databases, and the documentary closes with Rhea staring into the camera, knowing the investigation exposed only the first layer of a much larger network, and the final words echo that the welfare check had not uncovered a crime in the usual sense, but something far more unsettling, an invisible rewriting of reality that was still happening, one erased name at a time.